GPU pricing has continued to fall since last month, and really excited to see that it's fallen on some of the kind of 1080p cards that you might really be interested for people who are value-conscious 1080p gamers. Now, to be clear, in this video, I'm focusing on the new GPU pricing, not used. Especially if you're looking at under the $200 price range, you should really be looking at the used market, and that's a whole different topic. I'm focusing on new GPUs, and check this out. So I posted this 0 seconds ago as of my time of filming, although this video is probably publishing tomorrow, that I've seen the RTX 2060. Now you might just suddenly be like, wait, I thought you were talking about new GPUs. I thought 2060s were old. The 2060 was actually continued to be produced by Nvidia, even though the rest of the 2000 series lineup, I think, stopped being produced. So the rest of the 20 series you'd be looking at used, whereas the 2060 are still available new. I'm seeing shipped and sold by Amazon. And when I did my recommended GPU video last month, they were still hanging out around the $300 price point. But now I've seen the 6GB version available as low as $230 and the 12GB version as low as $280, which means that the $230 version is now my recommended, minimum 1080p new GPU that is really worth it. Because if you're buying new, not used again, the 2060 is going to get you in the door many games, especially older games at 1080p. You'll be maxing it out no problem. And then on the newest, most demanding games, you'll be turning down the settings a little bit, but they'll still look great at those settings and perform really well. Now, this has 6GB, so what about jumping up to that 12GB version? Well, I don't own a 12GB version for my own comparison, so I can't tell you hands-on, but from what I've seen, it looks like the overall performance between them is very similar. And honestly, for the settings that you will be running an RTX 2060 at, because if you turn down settings in a game, it usually reduces the VRAM requirements. I think 6GB is actually still pretty appropriate. I would have loved it if it had 8, but 6 I think will pretty much get the job done. And paying an extra, $40, $50 for the, I guess it's $50 difference here for the 12GB version, I don't think you'll, at least in current games, see enough of a boost in performance that's really going to be worth it. Although some people, or for professional applications, might actually really like having that 12GB VRAM buffer. Now, if you're willing to go with AMD, I do think the RX 6600, which is available as low as $250 to $260 right now, makes a lot of sense and is going to outperform the RTX 2060. In pretty much everything besides ray tracing, although at this performance level, I don't think the ray tracing makes a whole lot of sense. And actually the 6600, the ray tracing performance is pretty similar between the two, to be honest. And similar meaning they both lose. Okay, I don't think they're really worth it. So for just 1080p straight up gaming, I think the 6600 makes a lot of sense, although the 2060 is cheaper now, which when they were the same price, I'd recommend the 6600. But I think the 2060 makes a lot of sense price to performance for where it is now, and so does the 6600. Now, if you're willing to go up to the XT version for $300, you do get a significant performance bump between the 6600 and the 6600 XT, so this could very well be worth the money. And I think for the 6600 XT, you'll basically be maxing out everything besides ray tracing at 1080p on anything that's out now. And even in the future, it'll probably be a while before many titles need some significant compromises to the visual settings. And I think you're going to be very happy with this card for a very long time. Except I should touch on the AMD versus Nvidia debate. I'll probably talk more about this at the end of the video, but I would say that the biggest differences are upscaling with DLSS versus FSR, but my thoughts on that are at 1080p. Neither option would be my choice. I would try to run the games at native resolution, so I think it's a bit moot there. And at ray tracing, but between these particular GPUs, I don't think the ray tracing is worth it on either of them. So the other things to consider are professional applications, where the NVIDIA GPUs, a lot of professional programs, photo editors, video editors, 3D rendering programs, things like that, have been programmed with NVIDIA GPUs in mind, and so they will run better on that hardware. But not every program has that, so whichever programs you use professionally might be worth looking into. And the other main thing you want to look into is the streaming encoder if you're a live streamer. Now, a professional live streamer should probably buy a second PC and do a 2-PC streaming setup, but I'm guessing people looking at this class of GPU are more of a hobby streamer or interested in getting started. Both GPUs absolutely can stream from their GPU encoders. The main difference is that at low bit rates, the Nvidia GPU will look a little bit better. It will get a better looking image at the same low bit rate. Now, that doesn't mean you can't just be a hobby streamer, and I don't think it should hold you back from buying the AMD GPU if it's getting you a lot more performance for the money. So overall thoughts on that are really how serious are you taking that streaming idea? When you're factoring that into your decision. Also, a lot of people feel like the Nvidia drivers are a lot more stable, fewer game crashes and things like that. Now, everybody's experience with this is different. Some people have no issue whatsoever with AMD GPUs. I had very few issues with them, although I do feel like my time with my AMD GPUs have seen a few more game crashes than my Nvidia GPUs, but it hasn't been a nightmare or anything like that. So that's the overall thoughts on should you be scared to buy the AMD version. Now, overall, let's start talking, should you go past this point? Well, I do think that if you want to game at 1440p or at 4K, you should buy a stronger GPU. The 6600 XT can get away with 1440p at good settings on especially older or less demanding games, but in the most demanding titles, you will already be turning some settings down, so it's a bit of a compromise. The problem is, though, if we start to want to spend more money, you do need to consider the fact that we will have new GPUs coming out towards the end of this year. And while the ones we're expecting to launch first, like the 4090 and 4080, we may get the 4070 before the end of the year as well, are probably going to be very expensive. They could start to put some pricing pressure on the upper end GPUs and kind of squeeze the top and the middle of the current GPU lineup a bit down. So on these 1080p GPU recommendations I think they could still drop in value, but not a massive amount at this point in the near future. If we go past this point, we could start to see more of a dollar value loss in the near future if you choose to buy now. Now, I don't think it's a huge mistake to buy now, and especially if you want a game at 1440p, the new GPUs are going to be very expensive and are probably going to be hard to buy at first, at least for their MSRPs, which might even be increased compared to the last generation. So with that being said, let's talk about what you should get. As you can see behind me right here, the RTX 3000 series is incredibly expensive still, despite having come down a lot. Even the RTX 3050, which you'll notice I wasn't recommending for 1080p. Believe it or not, this is weaker than an RTX 2060, which, as I just showed you, is available for $230. On PC Part Picker here, I'm sorting price low to high, and this searches all sorts of major retailers, Amazon, B&H Photo, Newegg, all sorts, EVGA, all sorts of things. And we can't find a price that's even less than $300, and it's going to get absolutely crushed by everything I recommended here. Now, if you try to go up to the 3060, it's $370 to $380 as your cheapest starting points, and that's actually only getting you pretty close performance to the 6600 XT. And if you're not talking ray tracing, the 6600 XT is probably ahead in most situations and for less money. Now, the 3060 Ti, on the other hand, well, at its pricing that I could buy it right now isn't a good deal for price to performance. The Best Buy drop. So Best Buy in the United States carries the Founders Edition reference cards for Nvidia. And they're always sold at their MSRP. So the RTX 3060 Ti at its MSRP of $400 is probably the next step up you might want to consider if you want to jump into 1440p gaming and you're willing to hunt for that deal. Again, the Best Buy will restock its GPUs usually on Thursday mornings, although not always. And you have to go online and reserve one to then pick up at your local Best Buy. And in the past, during the GPU apocalypse, it was almost impossible to do that. Bots would get them instantly, but because crypto mining is down, I was actually able to easily get a 3060 Ti. They stayed in stock, at least at the Best Buy near me, for hours at the last launch. So that would be my recommendation if you're looking for the best bang for the buck 1440p GPU. Now, the 3060 Ti is not a perfect 1440p GPU. I don't think it would deliver excellent ray tracing performance in most games at that resolution, and even at non-ray trace settings, in more demanding titles, you might have to turn it down. There's an AMD competitor. If you can't get your hands on the $400 price for the 3060 Ti, you could consider the 6700 XT model from AMD, which I could buy right now as low as $415. It looks like it's available at that price from Newegg, and has an instant promo code. It does not require a mail-in rebate at that price, so it is available at that price. So again, if you can't get the 3060 Ti at $400, or even you might consider the 6700 XT for $415 even versus the $400 3060 Ti, just because other than in ray tracing, the 6700 XT is usually going to have the advantage. It also has 50% more VRAM. Not that I think 8 gigabytes of VRAM at the settings you'll run a 3060 Ti at is usually going to cause you any problems. For longevity purposes, I think the 12 gigabytes would be nice. And like I said, in many situations, you will have a little bit more performance on the 6700 XT. And so if they're about the same price, you might seriously consider that, unless you're particularly interested, like I said, in ray tracing, because the 3060 Ti can deliver some ray tracing performance, especially if you're willing to upscale. And also, these cards would be good ones to consider for higher refresh rate 1080p gaming without jumping your price point completely out of the realistic realm of possibility. Anyway, it's nice to see these prices down. Now, jumping up to like a 3070 gets pretty expensive. You can buy them right now for around $520. I did briefly see a weekend sale from EVGA where they went below $500. But that was only a special sale over a weekend. And again, Best Buy drops. You can probably get the Founders Edition right at $500 without too much trouble these days. But again, this is $100 more than the 6700 XT, which, you know, the 3070 is certainly a better GPU than the 6700 XT, with the only real major trade-off being the 8 gigabytes of VRAM versus 12. But like I said, that's not usually going to cause problems. But for $100 more, I don't think it's that much better. I also don't think jumping up to the 3070 Ti makes sense, because the 3070 versus the 3070 Ti is only a small increase to performance, but the cheapest 3070 Ti's that are currently in stock are $628, so that's a huge jump. So if you're thinking like 3070 Ti, what you're getting compared to like that 4060 Ti at, $400, this is a huge amount of a money increase. And we're starting to get into the price range at $630, where the new GPUs coming out towards the end of the year, will probably be pushing this kind of price point down for this level of performance as we get closer, and especially once they're announced. And then hopefully we'll see the 4070 available around $600, although I would expect the soonest we would see the 4070 would probably be December, and I wouldn't expect much availability at its $500 to $600, I'm guessing, by the way, MSRP, until well into the 2023. So you'd be waiting a while. But like I said, I think we'll see pricing pressure at this price point. If you are considering going up to $600, the 6800, you have the 6800 or the 6800 XT from AMD. And to be honest, the XT version does give you a pretty big boost in performance. And if you're like thinking 3070 Ti versus 6800 XT, which I'm in the process of making a head-to-head comparison video of, I don't know if it'll be up in time for this video, you're getting vastly better performance from the 6800 XT. Now, if you want a GPU that can kind of do it all right now, and you will for sure be able to get better performance for the money later on. You could consider going up to the RTX 3080, especially the 12 gigabyte version, for around the $770 to $800 price point. Now, why am I talking about this GPU? Okay, so first of all, the AMD, if you want this level of performance and you don't care about ray tracing, I think get the 6800 XT from AMD because you're saving yourself over $100. Except for the fact that if you do care at all about ray tracing, the 3080, especially the 12 gigabyte version, is the card where I think ray tracing starts to be actually very usable at 1440p. And so, not everybody's going to care about this. I think you are getting a lot for your money here. And what I'm basically trying to say is I think the 3080 12 gigabyte is a card that you could buy now and be happy with for the next few years without feeling like you need to upgrade, especially at 1440p. Now, what you're going to lose out on here is I guarantee you that you will be able to get this performance for less money a few months from now, barring a big cryptocurrency resurgence or something like that, which again, nobody can for sure predict the future. But that's the main thing you would lose out on if you went with the 3080 12 gigabyte at this time period. I think you're going to buy, what you're buying is, you know, a few years of your happy 1440p gamer. Even if you need to use ray tracing, just kick on a little bit of DLSS and you're good to go. Now at 4K gaming, the 3080 12 gigabyte, I use it for 4K gaming and I'm very happy with it, but I certainly would welcome more performance in order to either not have to use DLSS as much or just to be able to get higher refresh rate 4K gaming. Like my monitor is capable of 4K 120 hertz, whereas my 3080 12 gigabyte is usually giving me 4K 60, and oftentimes even relying on DLSS to get there. It's certainly capable 4K GPU, but I really think where the next gen is coming out at the high end with these 4090, 4080, I think you're going to get significantly better 4K gaming experience with the next generation. And so that's where I think it might really make sense to hold off on the next generation. If you're targeting a really high-end 4K build and you're okay with spending a lot of money when the next gen launches. Other than that, you could buy the 3080 12 gigabyte for 1440p gaming, and you're certainly losing a couple $100 of value in the next few months. But what you're buying is you get something now, and you're going to be very happy with it at 1440p for a very long time to come. The only other thing I'll throw in there is if you are thinking in this price point and you're okay with the fact that, performance at this level is going to be cheaper soon, the 6900 XT from AMD, if you're not that into ray tracing right now and you just want a lot of rasterized performance, the 6900 XT is currently cheaper than the 3080 12 gigabyte. Now, if you're wondering why am I not going past the 3080 12 gigabyte on my recommendations, well, here's the thing. If you look at this relative performance chart, now this isn't perfect. Different games have different performance levels, all of that, different resolutions, whatever, but this is pretty close to accurate. The 3080 12 gigabyte, going up to a 3080 Ti only gets you about 9% better performance and sometimes even less than that. Going up to a 3090 is only about 10% better performance. Yes, the 3080 Ti and the 3090 have almost the same performance. And even the 3090 Ti is usually less than 20% gain. Let's call it 20%. So you get 20% more performance. But the thing is, at 1440p, you're not really going to notice the 20% better performance because your frame rate is already so high. And at 4K, even with 20% better performance, I think you're still going to be craving a little bit more, and waiting for that next gen makes a lot of sense given the price jump that happens here. Because if we look at the 3080 12 gigabyte at $770 versus the 3080 Ti, which is coming in at $850, you're getting very little performance gain for that. And then it's even worse going up to the 3090, which is over $1,000. And the only real meaningful performance jump up to the 3090 Ti is still over $1,200. We saw them go as low as like $1,150 over the weekend from EVGA, but that's still just a crazy, crazy price increase for the little bit of performance gain there. So again, I really think that the 3080 12 gigabyte is the sweet spot. Now, some of you might be like, why not the 10 gigabyte? Why do you keep going on and on about the 3080 12 gigabyte? Okay, well, it's because the 3080 10 gigabyte costs about the same and performs worse and has less VRAM. So I don't think the 10 gigabyte model makes sense unless it costs significantly less. Because yes, there actually is a performance difference. It's not just more VRAM, it has an expanded memory bus as well to accommodate the 12 gigabytes, which then increases its actual performance. It has a few more CUDA cores as well. Okay guys, hopefully this was useful for you. What is the overall summary of the situation? If you're worried about new GPUs coming out, but you're a 1080p gamer, I think buying in this price range, as I said, either the RTX 2060 or I think the 6600 XT, I think make the best deal here. 6600 XT for basically no compromise 1080p gaming, as long as you're, well, no compromise, I mean not that into ray tracing, and you're willing to go with AMD. And I think the RTX 2060 makes the most sense if you want the lowest price entry into solid 1080p gaming. At 1440p, I was recommending if you could find a 3060 Ti for its MSRP from Best Buy, that makes sense at $400, but at current pricing, I think the 6700 XT from AMD at current pricing actually makes a lot more sense if you can't find that $400 price point at from Best Buy on the 3060 Ti, and even if you can, you might still consider this if you're okay going AMD. And then like I said, going past that point is going to be losing value in the near future. But if you want just a card that that can do it all, and especially if you're thinking 1440p, I think the 3080 12 gigabyte still makes a lot of sense. And then if you're, like I said, you could consider the 6800 XT if you want rasterized performance for less money, or the 6900 XT if you want better rasterized performance but not as good ray tracing. Anyway, that's pretty much the summary of the recommended GPUs for this month. And I think I covered the AMD versus Nvidia topic pretty well while I was talking. But if you want more details on my thoughts on that, I do have a video I've done in the past where I went into way more thoughts on having used a 6800 XT for 6 months, switching to a 3080 12 gigabyte, and my overall experience with that switch. I hope all of you have an excellent day.